Hi folks, and welcome to the Ace Tanker in the IS-7. This is going to be a bonus video. I wasn't planning to bring this video to you today, but I decided, you know what, I put up the IS-4 Ace Tanker, and, I think it'd be nice. I think it'd be nice to put up the IS-7 Ace Tanker, because these are two Tier 10 Russian heavy tanks. They're often compared to each other. They're often, people do the pros and cons of both tanks, so I thought I might as well put up both aces together today, and mainly two videos today, because I didn't do any videos for the last couple of days because, I've been playing World of Tanks. But anyway, enough excuses. This is the IS-7. It's a relatively new tank to my garage. I haven't played that many games in it, and I was quite pleased when this one popped up. But this is another game I'm kind of surprised was an ace, because again, it's one of these games where I was playing on autopilot, and I really was just, messing around. I wasn't paying too much attention to the mini-map. I was paying enough, obviously, but, I was just playing the tank to its strengths, and, yep, the ace popped up, so I'm quite happy. But I didn't really think it was a strong game, and a couple of decisions I make towards the end of the game are a little bit dubious as regards my shooting. But other than that, yep, quite happy to pick up the ace quite quickly in this tank. But IS-7, it's probably far more popular than the IS-4 I was talking about earlier, mainly down to the fact it leads on from the IS-3, which is just an absolute beast at tier 8. I think a lot of people would rather drive the IS over the KV3. A lot of people would rather drive the IS-3 over the KV4. The T10 is actually a pretty good tank if you know its strengths and weaknesses, and the ST1 also a very, very good tank if you understand its strengths and weaknesses. But as a result of the IS-3, I think a lot of people go to the IS-7 first, and you see a lot more IS-7s on the server than you do IS-4s. And also, it also helps that a lot of players use the IS-7 in Clan Wars, so it's a far more popular tank than the IS-4. And that's for a few reasons. I mean, the armor is just incredibly good. The turret armor, incredibly good. Even though on paper it's got worse hull armor than the IS-4, in practice it doesn't really, not really. The turret armor is worse on paper than the IS-4, but in practice, no, definitely not. The turret armor is absolutely amazing on this tank. So this is a tank where basically you've got a pike nose, which means you want to keep your tank pointed directly towards the enemy at all times, but the side armor can't be underestimated. The side armor is pretty good, so you can side scrape, you can angle a little bit, as I say, as long as you don't give your pike nose to higher tier tanks. But lower tier tanks, tier 8s, absolutely no problems. They're going to have problems even penning the pike nose on this. So we'll pop into tanks GG, just like I did with the IS-4. So to sum up, basically what we have is slightly worse DPM, but we've got more alpha damage. We've got slightly slower rate of fire, slightly slower reload, but that alpha damage makes up for it. Great alpha damage. I'm sounding like Donald Trump here. We've got weapon handling, and the weapons handling, you've got slower aim times. The accuracy isn't quite as good, but the accuracy when firing on the move, the accuracy while turning your turret is better. You've got better gun elevation by a small margin, but the major differences happen here. So the gun, some people can argue that the gun is slightly better on the IS-4, and technically as regards aim time and accuracy it is, but gun handling it's not. But when it comes to movement, this is where the IS-7 gets a huge advantage, because you've got a 59 kilometer an hour top speed, you've got a 15 kilometer an hour top reverse speed, so basically, it's faster than the IS-4 is, and you've got this huge 1050 horsepower engine, which is historically accurate. I'll get into the history in a moment, which means that the tank has a power to weight ratio of 15.47, which was very, very similar horsepower to weight ratio as Russian medium tanks of that time. So, it's got a very, very good horsepower to weight ratio, which means that it can accelerate much, much better than the IS-4 can. It can maneuver much, much faster, get to its top speed much, much faster. As you can see, the turret traverse is a little bit quicker, and the tank traverse is a little bit better. So this is a tank that's far more mobile than the IS-4 is. When it comes to armor, again, the armor looks better. You've got better frontal armor, but you've got worse side armor than the on the hull than you do on the IS-4. But don't let this fool you, because this side armor incredibly good in the IS-7. The frontal armor, because of that pike nose, is incredibly good. The turret armor looks worse again than the IS-4, but again, this is something you can't let fool you, because the IS-4's armor is better turret-wise, but it's not that much better, as we're going to see when we take a look at the tank model in a moment. The health is the big thing. This is the biggest thing. Other than the maneuverability, I found the health a big difference between the IS-4 and the IS-7. That 350 hit points less that the IS-7 gets over the IS-4 makes a big difference. It does mean the difference between dying or not dying to a shot, or being able to take one extra shot. But other than that, I found both tanks equally competitive. I think both tanks have maps that suit them. Both tanks can do a job. Both tanks are equally troll against lower tier tanks, and both tanks are a bully. The IS-7 is possibly the best when it can get into a hull down position, use its amazing turret armor. IS-4 maybe a little bit better, where you can do a lot more side scraping and basically you're in a position where tanks are getting to your side and rear. But I think the IS-7 is extremely strong, and when you look at the tank model, you can pretty much see why, because even though the IS-4 technically has better side armor, better turret armor, and slightly worse hull armor on front, the IS-7 is no slouch, because this pike nose means you get up to 286 millimeters of armor on the front or upper hull, upper plate. You've got a lower glacis that's 234. Now again, this is something that can cause lower tier tanks huge problems. Even if you give your lower glacis to enemy tanks, there's no guarantee they're going to pen if they're, for example, tier 8s or firing 100 or 90 millimeter guns. So yeah, the pike nose is a crossover. It's a leftover from the IS-3, and then you've got this turret, and you'll notice that there's no weak turret roof. You know, the turret is angled, it's sloped, it rises above the roof, so the roof armor is not a weak spot on this particular tank. The turret armor, extremely good. Get hull down, this turret armor is almost impenetrable. Even the cupolas, extremely well hidden, very hard to hit the cupolas, and even then, you know, you need an incredibly good gun. So this is just, or well, I really should say it doesn't really have any cupolas, they're not weak spots, but it's just the frontal armor, incredibly good. But while the IS-4 is recognized as a side scraper and an angler, the IS-7 is no slouch either, because even though it has a pike nose and you angle, the pike nose is still quite effective. I mean, it's possible that there are some tier 8s that are going to be able to pen your pike nose when you angle, but again, it's going to cause lower tier tanks problems. Similar tier 9s, they're going to go through your pike nose when you angle. So when you do angle, you've got to be a little bit more careful than when you're in an IS-4. However, if you can hide this pike nose, the side of your pike nose, and you show the side armor, again, look at this side armor. It's just so good. I mean, there are points where they can shoot you in the cheek here, but again, that's only going to be effective against or when you're up against tier 10s or tier 9s. Tier 8s still might have problems penning the cheeks. But you've got this huge strip of spaced armor across the sides. That's 30 millimeters of spaced armor covering 100 millimeters of hull. But look at the effective armor. I mean, 600, 500 all the way down. I mean, it's going to be incredibly difficult to pen this tank through the side armor. You got to shoot below the spaced armor and into the above the tracks below the spaced armor. And even then, side scraping, unless someone knows what they're doing or has a very big gun, they're going to find problems. Going to have problems shooting the side of this tank when it's side scraping. So while the IS-4 is maybe a fractionally better, this tank is absolutely no slouch. And of course, your tracks or your space counts or your tracks count as spaced armor. So they're going to be absorbing shots as well. Where this tank does fall down is when you get to the exact side. When you can, you know, if the tank isn't angled, you can get to the side. What you can see is the turret armor is still incredibly effective. In fact, it's as good as if not better from the side than the IS-4's. I mean, it's very similar. It can be penned towards the rear, but you're going to need a big gun. Once again, tier 8s may have problems. You hit above the spaced armor, you've only got 186, but that's still better. That's still better than the IS-4, but where it's weaker than the IS-4, well, spaced armor, of course, much better than the IS-4, which doesn't have any spaced armor, but what's weaker when you get to the side of an IS-7 is the below the turret, or below the spaced armor. So you've got a hull here that's not hidden by tracks, it's not hidden by spaced armor, it's only about 126, 127 millimeters thick. Even through the tracks with its spaced armor, it's only 120. So when enemy tanks get to the side of an IS-7, they might find it easier to pen, as long as they're not aiming at the spaced armor and using auto-aim. They might find it easier to pen if they're able to shoot below the or above the tracks, below the spaced armor. But above the spaced armor, it's still pretty good, probably even a little bit better than the side armor on an IS-4. When you get to the rear, once again, the rear armor looks pretty weak compared to the IS-4 because the turret only has about 60, is it 60? According to this, it's 94 millimeters on the rear, but you got a weak area at the back of the turret. You can shoot in here. I'm not quite sure if you can hit the ammo rack from here. The ammo rack is further down, but basically, yeah, if you've got a low caliber gun, you can get to the rear of an IS-7, shoot through the top of the roof. You can shoot the back of the turret, and it's about 110, so it's about as effective as the IS-4 rear turret. Rear engine deck, only 96, so yes, okay, the IS-4 has better rear armor, but other than that, I think the side armor and the rear armor actually is a little bit better on this tank than people give it credit for, especially when comparing it to the IS-4. Yeah, this thing is just a monster, and it, again, exactly like the IS-4, it's for bullying lower tier tanks. If you come across tier 8s, they're going to have major problems penning this tank. If you go hull down, even tier 9s, even tier 10s are going to have major problems penning this tank. And the only thing you've got to keep in mind is don't angle or don't give up your pike nose, because at that point, unless it's a lower tier tank, higher tier tanks have no problems penning you here. But yeah, armor, once again, incredibly good on the IS-7. And maybe it's almost as good as the IS-4s, and that's why maybe people prefer driving the IS-7. The turret armor seems to be much better, even though on paper it's not. And the hull armor, still surprisingly good. So moving on to the history, the IS-7, it's a pretty interesting tank, and it's got a little bit of contention regarding its history as well, because, again, according to some sources, including Wargaming, the tank was designed in 1945, it entered trials in 1946, 1947, at least the only 3 that were built, because this is a prototype, only 3 of them were ever built. So apparently, you know, according to Wargaming, their sources say that it was under trial in 1946, 1947. Now, according to other sources, Russian tank historians and the Russian tank museums that actually have IS-7s, they say that the tank wasn't actually developed until 1948. So, you know, the date's a little bit mixed up, but, you know, I'm just putting the information out there. You can agree or disagree if you want. So, yeah, this was a prototype. Interesting tank because it was incredibly heavy. This is a tank that weighed almost 70 tons. Now, considering the IS-4 was 60 tons, this was 70 tons. It was a much heavier tank. However, in order to make up for that weight, what they did was they gave it an incredibly powerful engine, a 1,050 horsepower engine. They also gave it a new hydraulic pneumatics suspension, which made the tank extremely easy to drive. Even though the tank weighed almost 70 tons, according to sources, the drivers found it extremely easy to drive. Another thing they did was it's the first Russian tank, really, that came with this huge, long 130mm gun. That basically means in-game its alpha damage is higher than the IS-4. But this is a 130mm gun, an absolutely monstrous gun. So it had an amazing gun, but on top of that, the armor was so good that the IS-7 couldn't pen itself from the front. So even though the gun was, you know, other countries were experimenting with 90mm on tanks at that time, 105mm on tanks at that time. Some countries were testing 120mm. This is 130mm, and it couldn't pen itself from the front. Huge gun, very heavy tank, and that's why it never made it out of prototype, because the tank was just too heavy. Even though it performed well, passed all its trials, unfortunately the infrastructure in Russia, bridges, transporting the tank via road, transporting the tank via rail, meant that the tank was just far too heavy. So as a result, it was never developed further than the 3 prototypes, and Russia went towards developing lighter heavy tanks, or tanks that were kind of medium tanks or medium heavy tank hybrids. So yeah, only 3 were ever built, and that is pretty much it. So anyway, this is my first ace in the tank, and it's a relatively new toy for me. I don't play particularly well, at least in my opinion, and we're gonna go. So no, I don't want free camera, I want fixed camera. There we go. So as you can see, I'm doing this live. So here we are on Muravanka, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going forest, because I'm top tier. It's a tier 10 game, but there are only 4 tier 10s on either side, or 5 tier 10s on either side, I should say, a couple of tier 9s, and then a bunch of tier 8s. Now, I'm expecting to run into perhaps the lightly armored heavy tanks. I doubt that the E100 on the enemy team, I doubt the Mouse are going to be going forest. So I'm going to go into the forest and hopefully run into the AMX AX, or Centurion AX, the AMX 50B, Indeed we do, and we roll forward. We're just advancing, get a nice shot in the move. As I say, this tank is better at shooting on the move than the IS-4 is, even though the IS-4 gets better aim time and better accuracy. So, nice shot in the move to take a huge chunk out of the Centurion AX. And it looks like there are quite a few tanks here. Now, I'm getting a little bit worried because I've advanced here alone. I wasn't looking at the minimap. I've only got an ST1 and a T110E... What is that? T110E5, and they're kind of hanging back. I've got Scorpions, I've got an IS-4 who still hasn't left spawn. So we've got TDs hanging back. I'm staying hull down, I bounce a shot with my hull armor. I'm just looking for shots. And finally the T110E5 moves up. ST1 has started to move up, so I'm going to change my angle of attack here and start working on these lower tier tanks. So there's a tier 9, 7-1, and nice shot. 475. Okay, AX is coming over, maybe trying to shoot me. Nope, looks like he's aiming at someone else, don't get a shot. So the, yeah, reload, a little bit slower on this than it is on the IS-4. But most of the time when I play these tanks, I didn't really notice that much difference between the guns, if I'm completely honest. They're just stats, and when you're brawling and you're up close and personal, and you're bullying enemy tanks like you should be in this tank, yeah, the guns pretty much handle pretty much similarly, but they aren't very accurate and they have terrible aim time, which is why it always kills me to see heavy tanks, especially IS-4s and IS-7s, sniping from the back of the map. Yeah, heavy tank drivers who snipe from the back of the map. Oh, it's my current pet peeve, my pet hate in World of Tanks at the moment. But you can see I'm staying hull down. Get a nice shot into the 7-1 again, got a shot into the Borsig. We're just working this corner, haven't lost any health. Now there's an AT-15. I track him. I'm wondering, has he got a repair kit? So I turn around. Oh, it looks like he's got a repair kit. So I point my tank directly towards him, and I'm going to face hug, because that's what ISs do. Face hugging an IS-7, it's almost impossible for a lower tier tank to pen you. So we're just going to work here. I'm wondering, should I put another shot into the AT-15 or should I turn around? Borsig is a bigger threat. Come on, quick, reload. There we go. Yeah, the reload's a little bit slow. Borsig was able to pen me in the side. Unfortunately, I lost my first health there, but the slow reload meant I wasn't able to take out the Borsig. But we're being flanked here. So many tanks over here, but I'm going to try and track the 110, and a little bit unfortunate not to track him, but Scorpion G is a dangerous tank I don't want on my side, so I'm kind of swinging back to avoid the Scorpion G while the IS-4 moves in on the T1 or 110. So IS-4 is up here as well. He finally left cap. Oh, old man reaction shot. IS-4 goes down, turn around, gotta face the Scorpion, and he gets taken out by the Gorilla. Okay, so had to point my tank directly towards enemy tanks. So that's what you do. You face hug, get in their face, bully. The score is still 8-8, which I'm quite happy about because the enemy team on paper were a heck of a lot stronger than our team. Enemy team had a much stronger team. So I really was expecting this to be a far more one-sided affair, but our team are holding it together. Enemy team are now technically winning 8-9, but we're moving across. There was a Gorilla last spotted on the minimap somewhere down around F4, so that's who I'm advancing towards. Trying to keep buildings between myself and the Gorilla just in case I get spotted. Oh, there he is. And no shots. Okay, so just, you know, if I could play the theme music from Jaws right here, I would, because I'm moving up to ambush this Gorilla. No outline on the Gorilla yet. Oh, there he is. Yep, there he is. So we aim as long as we risk, take him out, and we're up to 2 kills, and that's almost 4k damage. So the mouse is here, AMX-50B, another dangerous tank. Now, what I could have done was I could have just gone up the hill, but what I decided to do is basically flank. And I'm looking at this IS-3 and I'm thinking, okay, one hit kill. So we're flanking, we're ignoring the mouse, we're ignoring the 50B, and someone else takes out the IS-3. In the meantime, our T-34 goes down, I get spotted. So now they know I'm here, but the enemy team are down to 2 tanks. Our team have done extremely well, and it's just a matter of flanking. And here's where my shooting is not the best, because I move up, I'm thinking AMX-50B, one hit kill, And there we go. That's the poor accuracy. That's the Russian gun for you. Shot goes way to the left. I wasn't able to aim it, but we're going to reload. And this shot is fine. This shot's fine. We're aiming to track the mouse in place, which we do. Hoping to get some assistance damage. 50B is now dead, so the mouse is the only tank left on the enemy team. So I'm staying hull down. Track him again, and that mouse armor. That mouse armor, such a pain in the butt. So we failed to track the mouse. He's on the move again. I probably should have aimed that track shot a little bit better. And here we go. Going for the lower glacis and hit the tracks, but failed to track him again. So I'm thinking, okay, he's coming to ram me. He's coming to ram me. That's fine. He's on 16. No, he's not on 1600 hit points anymore. But we can deal with him. And this shot is terrible. Oh no, this shot's fine. I go for the lower glacis. That's just fine. It's this shot coming up is the one I don't know why I took this shot. So I'm trying to track him again when I should just go for the kill. And I basically hit his armor at an incredibly bad angle and do absolutely nothing. So he gets a shot into me as a result, and yeah. Okay, he's down to 159. This time we aim for the lower glacis. Come on, Irish, you can do it. Alright, there we go. 3 kills, messed up towards the end. 3 kills and 5k damage. So there you go, first ace, no other medals in the IS-7, but I'm happy to get it out of the way. As I say, it's a relatively new tank for me. Haven't played as many games in this as I have in the IS-4, so yeah, I'm happy with that. And it was a game played on autopilot. Once again, I kind of was just playing the tank, staying hull down, trying to keep the front towards enemies, and just shooting everything that appeared. And we ended up with 5k damage, 3 kills, and 1123 XP, which was enough to pick up the ace, which, you know, I'm kind of, again, surprised. Very, very surprised. But we fired 17, hit 15, and pen 12. So, yeah, the rate of fire isn't quite as good as it is on the IS-7 or IS-4, but you do get more alpha damage. The armor, just as good. We only received 7 hits this time, 5 non-pens. So, again, the armor, it can be incredibly good, especially against lower tier tanks. You've got to be on the front lines, got to be a bully. You know, don't throw away your tank, don't be too aggressive. But when you're facing tier 8s, tier 9s, you know, there's far less point in being careful. Your arm can take a hit, so take a hit. We spotted 2, damaged 7, destroyed 3, did 1467 assistance, and earned 50,000 credits with a premium account. Again, nice money making in a tier 10. So yeah, IS-7, I liked it. And the IS-4, I liked it, and you've got both ace tankers. I've changed my mind, decided to bring out both replays today. Yeah, I like either tank. I think it really depends on the map you get onto. If it's a big open map or a choke point map, I think the IS-7 is probably a little bit better thanks to its maneuverability and the ability to go hull down. If it's a city map, you know, where you got the potential of being flanked, tanks getting to your side and rear. If it's a map where there's no RT or you've got a chance to angle and side scrape, then I think the IS-4 can be a very, very good tank. So it really, really is a little bit map dependent as to which one I prefer. But I thought the IS-4 and the IS-7 were equally good. Really enjoyed my time in both of them. You know, and now that they're aced, I probably won't be playing them quite as much as I usually do, because I usually focus on tanks I'm either acing or tanks I'm grinding. So these will be played on special occasions. But IS-7, yeah, I can see why people love it. And the IS-4, yeah, I can see that people don't love it because it's not as good armor frontally as the IS-7, but I think the IS-4 has its moments. It's a very, very strong tank when you understand its strengths and weaknesses. So as always, this is part of the 5k subscribers special videos, so just leave a comment if you'd be in with a chance of winning a prize. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.